I was driving down the highway late one night, alone in my car. The road stretched out in front of me for miles, with nothing but darkness around. It was just me, my car's headlights, and the radio playing softly in the background. I had been driving for a long time, and even though I wasn't too tired, I figured it would be a good idea to pull over and take a break. It's weird how roads can make you feel lonely, even when you're surrounded by everything you need. The drive had been peaceful, though, which was nice. Not many cars were on the road this late, so I could drive at my own pace without worrying about traffic. After a while, I started feeling like I needed to stretch my legs, maybe grab a drink or use the restroom. That's when I saw a sign for a rest area coming up in a few miles. I figured it would be a good spot to pull over for a bit and take care of whatever I needed before continuing my drive. Plus, the idea of getting out of the car for a bit seemed like a good way to wake up. I pulled into the rest area and parked the car under one of the few lights in the parking lot. It wasn't a busy place. In fact, it looked completely empty, with only a couple of other cars parked here and there. There was a strange feeling in the air, like something wasn't right, but I brushed it off, telling myself I was just being paranoid. It was the middle of the night, after all. It's normal for things to feel a little off when you're tired and alone. I stepped out of the car, the cool night air hitting my face, and I stretched my legs. The rest area itself looked run down, like it hadn't been maintained in a while. The lights flickered above me, casting strange shadows on the ground. I could see the restroom building not far away, and I figured I'd go there first. The sooner I could get back on the road, the better. As I made my way to the restrooms, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I tried to ignore it, but the silence was unnerving. The only sound I could hear was my own footsteps on the pavement, echoing in the empty space. Suddenly I heard it. A loud, piercing scream that seemed to come from somewhere behind the restroom building. My heart jumped and I froze in place. The scream sounded like someone was in pain, like they were terrified. I stood there, trying to figure out where it came from, my mind racing with questions. Who was out here at this time of night? What could have happened? I didn't know what to do. Part of me wanted to get back in my car and leave, but another part of me felt like I should try to help. What if someone was in trouble? I couldn't just leave without at least checking it out. Slowly, I walked toward the back of the restroom building, my steps cautious and my eyes scanning the area for any signs of movement. As I rounded the corner of the building, I saw something that made my stomach drop. In the distance near the edge of the woods that bordered the rest area, there was a man dragging another man. The man being dragged wasn't moving, and the other man was pulling him into the trees, disappearing into the darkness. For a moment, I just stood there, frozen in place. My brain couldn't process what I was seeing. Was this real? Was I really watching someone get dragged into the woods? My heart started racing, and I felt a cold sweat break out on my forehead. I knew I had to do something, but I also knew that running after them was probably the worst idea. I quickly pulled out my phone and dialed 911, my hands shaking. As I waited for the operator to answer, I kept my eyes on the spot where the men had disappeared. The night seemed even darker now, and every shadow looked like it could be hiding something. Yeah. 911, what's your emergency? The operator's voice finally came through the phone. I'm at a rest area off the highway, and I just saw someone dragging another person into the woods, I said, my voice shaky. It looked like the person was unconscious, and they were dragging them into the trees. I don't know what's going on, but it didn't look good. The operator asked for the location of the rest area, and I gave them the details. They told me to stay put and that officers would be on their way as quickly as possible. I hung up the phone, my heart still pounding in my chest. I stood there for what felt like hours, but in reality it was probably only a few minutes before the police arrived. They pulled up in 2 squad cars, their lights flashing, and a few officers got out to talk to me. I explained what I had seen, pointing toward the spot where the men had disappeared into the woods. The officers searched the area, shining their flashlights into the trees and calling out, but they didn't find anything. After what felt like forever, one of the officers came back to me and said, "We didn't find anyone. No signs of a struggle, no tracks, nothing. Are you sure about what you saw?" I couldn't believe it. How could they not find anything? I knew what I had seen. I wasn't imagining things. I tried to explain it again, but the officer just shook his head. "This isn't the first time we've been called to this rest area," he said in his voice low. "Strange things happen here. People go missing and we can never find any evidence. I'd suggest you get back on the road and don't stop here again." His words sent a chill down my spine. I didn't need to be told twice. I thanked the officers and hurried back to my car. As I drove away, I kept looking in my rearview mirror, half expecting to see something or someone following me. But the road stayed empty and I was alone again. For the rest of the drive, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had just witnessed something terrible. The thought of the man being dragged into the woods kept playing in my mind, and I couldn't help but wonder what had happened to him. Had the police just missed something, or was there something more sinister going on at that rest area? All I knew was that I never wanted to stop at a rest area again, no matter how tired I was or how badly I needed a break. That night taught me that some places are better left alone, and sometimes it's better to just keep driving. I never thought I'd find myself driving alone at night, but there I was, cruising down the dark, empty road. The moon hung low in the sky, casting a faint glow on the asphalt, and the trees lining the road swayed gently in the cool night breeze. The only sound I could hear was the soft hum of my car engine and the occasional chirp of crickets. Earlier that evening, I'd been hanging out with some friends. We laughed, joked, and ate too much junk food. By the time I decided to head home, it was late. I got in my car and started the drive, feeling a mix of tiredness and excitement. As I drove, I turned on the radio to keep myself awake. "Breaking news," the announcer said. "If you are driving tonight, please be aware of a woman wandering the streets. She has been seen asking for rides, but she is armed with a knife. If you see her, do not stop and call the police immediately." My heart raced as I listened. "Stay safe and don't pick up any strangers tonight." I tried to shake off the warning, telling myself it was probably just a hoax. After all, what were the chances of running into someone like that? I turned the volume down and focused on the road ahead. But as I continued driving, I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that had settled in my stomach. I thought about the woman with the knife, and for a moment, I considered turning around and heading back to my friend's place. But I was already halfway home, and I just wanted to get there. Suddenly, I saw something in my headlights, a figure standing by the side of the road. As I got closer, I realized it was a woman. She looked distressed, and my heart sank. "Please, can I get a lift?" she asked as I slowed down. Her voice was shaky and her long hair fell around her face. She was wearing a dark jacket, just like the radio had described. I hesitated. The words from the radio echoed in my mind. I thought about the warning, about the woman with the knife. "Who are you?" I asked, trying to sound brave. "I just live across the street. My bike broke down and I need help," she said, pointing in the direction of the road. But I didn't see any bike anywhere. It seemed odd, and something in my gut told me to be careful. I glanced at her again. There was something off about her. Her eyes looked frantic, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I shouldn't trust her. Just as I was about to drive away, the radio crackled back to life. "Attention drivers, we have reports of a woman in a dark jacket with long hair asking for rides. Please do not stop. She has been associated with dangerous behavior." Panic flooded through me. It was the same description of the woman standing right outside my window. My heart raced as I realized what was happening. This was not just a coincidence. I quickly pressed the gas pedal and drove past her, my hands shaking on the wheel. I didn't look back. The fear of what could happen if I stopped was too overwhelming. As I drove away, my mind raced with thoughts. What if I had stopped? What if she had been trying to trick me? I shuddered at the thought. The road ahead was still empty, but my heart continued to pound in my chest. I tried to focus on the drive, but my mind kept drifting back to the woman. What was her story? Was she really in trouble, or was she part of something sinister? I shook my head, trying to clear my thoughts. Just when I thought I could relax, I heard a loud bang coming from my back tire. My heart sank. No, 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 I whispered to myself as I pulled over to the side of the road. I was in the middle of nowhere, and I knew I had to check the tire. As I stepped out of the car, the cold air hit my face, and I could hear the night sounds around me. I opened the trunk to grab the spare tire, and just as I was about to start changing it, I heard something, a rustling noise coming from the trees nearby. My heart raced again. I looked around, feeling exposed. What if the woman from earlier had friends hiding in the dark? I quickly got to work, trying to stay focused on the tire, but the rustling only grew louder. It was like someone or something was getting closer. I glanced up, and for a moment, I thought I saw a shadowy figure between the trees. My breath caught in my throat. I forced myself to look away and finished changing the tire as quickly as I could. Every second felt like an eternity, and I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Sage. Finally, with the new tire in place, I jumped back into my car, locking the doors behind me. I started the engine and took a deep breath, trying to calm myself. As I drove away, the earlier fear morphed into anger. Why do I always find myself in these situations? I asked aloud. I just wanted to get home. But then I remembered the radio's warning. If I hadn't heard that message, I might have given the woman a ride. I might have ended up in a dangerous situation, maybe even worse. I can't believe I almost let that happen, I muttered. If that radio hadn't been on at that time, I don't know what would have happened. With every passing mile, I felt more relieved to be getting closer to home. As I turned onto my street, the lights from my house came into view. I parked the car and took a deep breath, finally feeling safe. Once inside, I locked the door behind me and sat down. I couldn't stop shaking. The night had turned into a nightmare, and all I wanted was to forget it. But as I replayed the events in my mind, I knew that I'd never take a late-night drive for granted again. I guess it's true what they say, I thought to myself. Sometimes, the things we ignore can be the things that save us. From that night on, I always checked the radio before heading out. I learned that listening could save me from danger. I would never let my guard down again, especially late at night. As I lay in bed trying to shake off the fear, I thought about how close I had come to something terrible. I felt grateful that I had listened to my instincts, and I knew that if I ever found myself in a similar situation again, I wouldn't hesitate to drive away. After that night, I promised myself I would never pick up strangers on the road again. No matter how convincing they seemed, my safety would always come first. If I hadn't heard that radio warning, I could be in a very different place right now. So I made a vow. No matter how urgent my need for help might seem, I would never let a stranger into my car again. Hi, my name is Anna, and this incident of what I am about to share with you is a big nightmare for me. It was a late night when I decided to make a quick stop at Walmart to pick up some snacks for a party I was hosting the next day. I had been driving for what felt like hours, the road stretching endlessly before me. I needed to grab some Doritos, drinks, and other treats, and Walmart was the only store open at this hour. As I pulled into the parking lot, I noticed how massive the store was. It loomed in front of me, its fluorescent lights buzzing and flickering slightly. I stepped out of my car, feeling the cool night air against my skin. There weren't many cars in the lot, which was both reassuring and eerie. I thought about how quiet the world seemed at this hour. The party would be fun, but I knew I had to be quick about my shopping. Once inside, I was greeted by the familiar sights and sounds of Walmart. The aisles were stocked with brightly colored packages, and the soft hum of the cooling units filled the air. Despite its size, the store felt oddly empty. I glanced around and noticed that most of the shelves were empty, with only a few late-night shoppers scattered throughout the aisles. I made my way to the snack aisle, scanning the shelves for the Doritos. As I reached for a bag, I suddenly felt a pair of eyes on me. I turned my head and spotted a man standing a few feet away. He was wearing a black vest and had long hair that fell over his shoulders. His face was unremarkable, but there was something unsettling about the way he stared at me, as if he was sizing me up. "Hello," he said cheerfully, breaking the silence. "You shouldn't be here. The Walmart is about to close. I can take you to the back exit so you can leave safely." My heart raced. I didn't like the way he approached me, as if he knew something I didn't. "No thanks. I'll just find my own way out," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. I turned away quickly, but I could feel him following me. I picked up my pace, hoping to shake him off. I glanced back and he was still there, his expression unchanged, but his eyes were now fixed on me with a hint of intensity. "Where are you going? Where are you going?" he continued, his voice almost sing-song. I felt a shiver run down my spine. There was something wrong about this man, something that made my instincts scream for me to run. I hurried to another aisle, hoping to lose him among the shelves. The store felt massive, and I thought that if I just kept moving, I could outpace him. But every time I looked back, he was there, keeping his distance, but always watching. Desperation clawed at me as I made my way toward the checkout. I could see the cashiers chatting quietly with each other, and I felt a moment of relief. I was almost out of there. But as I reached the front of the store, I noticed that the man had followed me right to the checkout line. My heart raced even faster as I paid for my items, the cashier oblivious to the tension that had been building. I kept glancing over my shoulder, and to my horror, I saw him standing a few feet away, still staring at me. It felt as though his eyes were boring into my soul, and I couldn't shake the feeling that he was waiting for something. After paying, I grabbed my bag and rushed toward the exit. I felt a strange mix of fear and adrenaline coursing through me, and I was almost there, almost safe. But when I stepped outside, I was greeted by the cool night air, which only seemed to heighten my anxiety. I glanced around the parking lot, trying to find my car. My eyes darted from one vehicle to another, searching for familiarity. Just as I spotted my car, I turned to see the man standing there, holding a sign that read, "I love you." It was a strange and surreal moment, one that made my skin crawl. I didn't understand why he was holding that sign, and I didn't want to find out. My instinct told me to get away from him as fast as possible. I rushed to my car, fumbling with my keys as I tried to unlock the door. The man didn't move. He just stood there, still holding the sign and staring at me with that same unsettling smile. I could feel panic rising in my chest. I finally managed to open the door and jumped inside, locking it as fast as I could. I took a deep breath, my hands shaking as I put the keys in the ignition. I glanced in the rearview mirror, half expecting him to be right behind me. But he was still standing in the same spot, his sign still held high, a haunting reminder of my encounter. I didn't want to think about what might have happened, if I had followed him or what his intentions truly were. I peeled out of the parking lot, my heart racing as I drove away. I could still see the glow of the Walmart sign in my rearview mirror, and I felt a shiver run down my spine. I was relieved to be away from that man, but the fear lingered. I couldn't shake the feeling that I had narrowly escaped something terrible. The drive home felt longer than usual. I kept glancing in my mirrors, paranoid that he might be following me. The roads were empty and the streetlights flickered ominously as I passed under them. The darkness outside seemed to close in around me, and I felt my pulse quicken with every passing minute. As I drove, my mind raced with thoughts of the encounter. Who was that man? What did he want? I replayed the events in my mind, trying to make sense of it all. Maybe he was just a harmless weirdo, but something told me there was more to it. When I finally pulled into my driveway, I felt a rush of relief. I parked the car, locked the doors, and hurried inside. Once I was inside, I leaned against the door, trying to calm my racing heart. I knew I wouldn't be able to sleep that night. The fear would linger long after the encounter. I made myself a cup of tea, hoping it would soothe my nerves. As I stood in the kitchen, I replayed the evening in my mind. The more I thought about it, the more questions I had. Had he been watching me? Was he targeting me specifically, or was I just an unfortunate coincidence? I tried to convince myself that I was overreacting. After all, it was just one strange man in a Walmart, but every time I closed my eyes, I could see him standing there, that sign held high, and the look in his eyes sent chills down my spine. Eventually, I decided to call my friend Sarah. She always had a way of calming me down, and I needed to talk to someone about what had happened. I picked up my phone and dialed her number, pacing the floor as I waited for her to pick up. "Hey, Anna, what's up?" Sarah's cheerful voice came through the line, and I felt a wave of relief wash over me. "Hey, Sarah, you won't believe what just happened to me at Walmart," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Is everything okay?" she asked, her tone shifting to concern. "I don't know. There was this creepy guy who kept following me around the store, and then when I left, he held up a sign that said, 'I love you.' It was just really weird," I explained, my heart racing as I recounted the story. "Wow, that sounds terrifying. Are you okay?" Sarah asked, her voice filled with empathy. "I think so. I just feel really shaken up. I keep thinking about what could have happened if I had followed him or if I'd been alone in the store," I admitted. "Do you want me to come over? We can hang out and watch some movies to take your mind off it," she offered. I hesitated for a moment. I didn't want to be alone, but I also didn't want to burden her with my fear. "I don't want to put you out, but I could really use some company," I finally replied. "Of course, I'll be there in a bit," she said cheerfully. I hung up the phone, feeling a bit better knowing that Sarah would be there soon. I decided to grab a blanket and make myself comfortable on the couch while I waited. As I curled up, I tried to distract myself with some TV, but my mind kept drifting back to the encounter at Walmart. A little while later, I heard a knock at the door. I jumped up, feeling a mix of relief and anxiety. I opened the door to find Sarah standing there, her arms filled with snacks and drinks. "Hey, I brought some goodies," she exclaimed, stepping inside. "Thanks for coming over. I really needed this," I said, forcing a smile. We settled down on the couch and I tried to focus on the movie playing on the screen, but my mind kept wandering back to the strange man. I couldn't shake the feeling that he was still out there, lurking in the shadows. Now, I don't know what that guy wanted or why he even called me. If I've listened to him and went with him, I really don't want to know what would have happened, and I wish this incident just goes away from my mind.